The Free Market Foundation recently took part in a roadshow from Nelson Mandela Bay to the city of Cape Town. Along the way, we stopped off in Mossel Bay to visit Bitcoin Ekasi, which is doing some fascinating work, particularly in low-income areas, with Bitcoin adoption. We spoke with Herman Vivier, who is the pioneer of this fascinating project. Herman, welcome to this conversation. So tell us more about Bitcoin Ekasi, but then also your interest in Bitcoin. And I think one of the messages we're trying to drive is communities taking action, doing it yourself to solve some of the many problems in South Africa at the moment. And this idea of self-sovereignty and self-sufficiency, not always being reliant on the state. How does Bitcoin fit into that idea?
There's a couple of questions in there. I think to start off with Bitcoin Ekasi, it's a community youth empowerment program, and essentially what we do is we pay staff salaries in Bitcoin as opposed to fiat. So we try and maximize the use of Bitcoin on a peer-to-peer grassroots level, and try to minimize the use of fiat currency to try and encourage the adoption of an alternative system that is decentralized and governed by rules that are transparent and fair. So that's basically what Bitcoin Ekasi does. As an organization, it's existed for more than a decade, but the Bitcoin adoption phase of that has been going since August 2021. So it's just over two years now. And
our viewers will see the waves of Mossel Bay crashing behind us.
Yeah.
And so you have young people providing surf lessons and also training in surfing, and so that's giving them quite a lot of agency and kind of goal-directed activity to be able to learn that skill and also transfer that skill to others. On the sort of the basic ground level, what we do is our youth empowerment program recruits children from a township. The township is just behind us over here. We then teach those kids over the course of many years. We teach them surfing, which is a really hard skill to acquire. It's not something that happens overnight. So that's empowering in and of itself. And it's the staff who then run that organization. It's a staff of about 16, 17 people. They then earn their salaries in Bitcoin. The program runs 5 days a week. We accommodate up to 35 kids per day. And some of the children stay in this program for years. We've had children who have participated almost on a daily basis for 6, 7, 8 years. So it's all about long-term focus and development, which is basically where it ties in with Bitcoin. Okay, so there's that social component, which is obviously very important, but then there's this financial component, and you're obsessed with Bitcoin adoption. So it's all very well to pay these youngsters in Bitcoin, but then how do they go on to use that currency in their daily lives to acquire goods and services? Speak to us about some of the adoption, particularly in the township that you mentioned. Yes. So the coaches, as we started transitioning salaries away from fiat to Bitcoin, at the same time we were onboarding shops in the township, regular spaza shops, corner stores, barber shops, to accept Bitcoin as payment on a peer-to-peer basis. So it's got nothing to do with the exchange between Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. It's got nothing to do with the exchange between Bitcoin and fiat. It's got nothing to do with trading. It's all about peer-to-peer transactions. So my Bitcoin goes to you, your Bitcoin goes to him, as a form of daily currency. So it's not only about paying salaries in Bitcoin, obviously, it's about onboarding the shops in the township to then accept that as payment, and helping those shops to then go to their suppliers or figuring out ways to use that further on. And like the surfing program down at the beach, where
we're trying to empower these youths by teaching them the skill. Bitcoin has a very similar effect in the community, because all of a sudden it almost, in a very sort of gentle way, forces people to recognize the question of value. Where does value come from? What is value? What gives something value? And how do I secure that value for the long term and for my own future? And eventually, when some of the senior coaches that have been receiving their salaries in Bitcoin for 2 years or more, eventually everybody that gets paid in Bitcoin, and all these staff live in the township. They come from the same township as the kids we recruit into the program. Eventually they all start saving for the first time in their life. Like their previous jobs would not have been higher paying than what we pay them. The salaries are very comparable, but because we're paying them in a currency that cannot be printed and inflated to infinity, and therefore the value of that currency goes up very reliably over the long term, they start thinking about saving and accumulating capital for the future. And that's something entirely new for all of them. And that's something that I see as very positive, taking that responsibility onto themselves. Even if it's saving only 200 Rand a month, it's not about how much they're accumulating, it's about the mindset of accumulating for the future.
Yeah, and even middle class people sort of tacitly acknowledge that cash or their fiat currency is depreciating.
Yes.
Because most people's retirement savings are all locked up in equities,
yes.
Right? Because there's an implicit assumption there that you're a bit of a fool to just be keeping all your cash in the bank, because
Absolutely.
that's like having a bag of melting ice cubes.
Absolutely.
It's rapidly depreciating. And there are pressures in South Africa, political pressures on the independence of the Reserve Bank. I mean, I think some of us libertarians would think, why is there a reserve bank in the first place?
Absolutely.
Because that's a security hole, if you think about it.
Yeah.
And is ripe for political capture. So there's this really big risk in South Africa that we could have the type of political capture of the monetary system. I mean, arguably we already do. Just to round off this conversation, I mean, what got you interested in Bitcoin from a kind of philosophical and theoretical perspective? Because we're on this roadshow talking about the institutions of government, and we're advocating for federalism and decentralization. And that's not just because that might be a more efficient system of government, but it actually has a philosophical grounding that power is best when distributed down and out rather than concentrated in one particular space. And I think there's a huge amount of resonance there with what cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular is doing.
Yeah. I'd like to just quickly touch on something else you mentioned with regards to saving. It's interesting because everybody understands that saving means not saving in cash. If you want to save for the future, you have to invest. Saving is investing. And I think few people from this sort of middle class or upper middle class or whatever think about how insidious the fiat system is to the poor masses. Because if you are one of those people who live in a shack, you haven't got proof of address, you haven't got an address to begin with, you cannot open a bank account, you cannot even begin to think about opening some sort of an investment portfolio. The only financial instrument that you have access to is paper cash. So why would you even begin to think about saving for the future if the thing that you're saving in is depreciating in value year on year? The entire system is set up, whether it's on purpose or not, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. But the system as it is functions to discourage the poorest from taking responsibility for their own financial future. They're disincentivized to save for the future because the only thing that they can save in is losing value. So if you have a permissionless system that does not place that KYC burden on people and allows them to open an account within minutes by simply downloading an app, but gives them access to a savings technology, it's transformative beyond anything that people would normally. It's hard to describe. You've got to kind of see it in reality to see how transformative this thing is. But yeah, to your point about the decentralization of money, yeah, I mean that's basically the one thing that I care more about than anything else. It is the decentralization of everything and anything that can be decentralized. And we have a tool that just so happens to be really good at decentralizing money. So I'm heavily focused on that, but I care about the decentralization of power wherever it's possible. And it's a philosophical conversation, because ultimately the only form of governance that is a successful form of governance is self-governance. Governance that is imposed by arbitrary external authority is never going to motivate people to make the right decision most of the time. It's going to motivate them to make the right decision sometimes. But
when it aligns with their own interests.
Exactly, when it aligns with their own interests. But if they haven't got personal responsibility and their interests do not align with the arbitrary rules, good luck trying to govern them. You have to give people personal responsibility, or you have to put personal responsibility onto them, or they have got to, I don't know how that works, but I know that that's the only thing that works. And so I latched onto Bitcoin very early on because I recognized the primacy of self-governance through personal responsibility as the only way to really create a society where people live together according to agreed upon set of rules that are in everybody's interest. It's never going to be achieved through enforcement through an arbitrary authority.
Well, Herman, Vivier, thank you very much for sharing your insights with us. I really like your message of individual responsibility, self-sovereignty, and individuals and communities taking responsibility for their own affairs. So that's definitely resonates with us at the Free Market Foundation and this campaign for home rule that you're running.
Thank you, appreciate it, thank you.
Thanks for watching this content from the Free Market Foundation. If you would like more videos from the FMF, why don't you hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to like this video and comment down below with your thoughts. My name is David Ansara. Until next time, stay free.